right, welcome to Old School. Fun crew tonight. Cenk Uygur, Mark Thompson, David Feldman, everybody. Good to see you guys.
Come on. Very excited to be on with David Feldman, who I've known for many years.
Yeah. Nice to meet you, Mark.
So I was gonna ask these guys if they knew each other because I didn't know whether they knew each other. And then they get on and instantly start razzing each other. And so then I knew they didn't know each other at all. They just knew that each other's podcasts were terrible and too long.
I mean, I don't know whether David's is terrible or not. I can't get through the whole thing. It's 13 hours long. I mean, so it might be quite good, but I just at some point I got to go out for supplies, you know.
All right, so we're Old School sponsored by shoptyt.com, where you can get Mark's hat or this new one, Mark, Black on Black. Okay.
Oh, that's very, very true.
Very cool. Very cool.
That's very dope, as the kids say. That's really dope.
Yeah.
And by kids, I mean 45-year-olds would probably say dope. Yeah.
Yes, I think I agree on all fronts. And I think that a lot of people say that I am dope, but I'm not quite sure how they mean that. And of course, speaking of dope, also TooStrongCoffee.com/TYT, where this gorgeous handmade mug made in America by a progressive is for sale. And we give money to progressive causes too. So TooStrongCoffee.com/TYT. We're apparently also sponsored by David Feldman's 13-hour podcast.
Yes.
And Mark Thompson, The Edge with Mark Thompson. Okay.
Yes, thank you.
So, all right,
it's
guys.
It's not 13 hours.
It is. It's absolutely 13 hours. Well, how long is it normally? It's 8 to 11 hours.
I do.
Regularly.
I do a 6 to 8 hour podcast.
Who does a 6 to 8 hour podcast? It's insanity.
Because there might be a pony in all that, as the joke goes.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
So there's actually another guy who does that, and that's Hassan Piker on Twitch.
So there you go.
Yeah, he does 6, 8, 10, 12 hours at a time. So you're
when you're young and good looking. When you're young and good looking, Mark, like me, and
like you and Hassan,
nephew, people can't get enough of Hassan and me. We're studs.
Yeah.
No, when you put it that way, I really do get it. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I believe the word you're looking for, David, is clamoring. They're clamoring for you guys.
Yeah, they're clamoring. They're not listening to Hassan or me. They're just looking at us.
Yeah.
We're selling something.
Well, there's a clamor for sure in David's case, and I don't know if they're clamoring for more, but yeah. Moving on.
Okay, so I'm gonna start well, everything's random on Old School, but actually this one's actually is probably less random than our usual topic. But let me ask you guys this question. Have you heard of ivermectin?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Plays for the Knicks, I believe.
Yeah. No, it was the slogan, the motto of the Roman Felix Legion.
That's right, ivermectin.
Yeah, and although Alan Ivermectin doesn't believe in practice, so that's a different thing. But
ivermectin is part of a logical fallacy, I believe, from ivermectin e pluribus punum. It's a little bit of, okay, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, of course, as everyone knows.
Yes.
So you guys know because you're in the news business, et cetera. Honestly, if I didn't cover the news, I'm not sure that I would have known it. I had not seen it anywhere until I started reading the articles about how Republicans were taking this medication meant for horses, and that it's for deworming horses and cattle, but they had become convinced that it was better than the vaccine. Now, this opens up a can of worms, which good news, we have ivermectin.
Yeah. Wow, well done.
Deworm. Those can of worms. But anyway.
I love Mark's well done. You've been in Hollywood way too long, Mark. Well done.
That's certainly true.
I'm waiting for that's funny.
Yeah, right. I'm sorry. You're right. I should have just laughed politely. You're right.
So we're already having fun. So
Mark is very competitive, by the way.
Right.
He's keeping score.
Yeah.
I know, because he just did an episode of The Edge with Mark Thompson that was 9 hours long.
Yeah,
so
that's right. That's right. I'm gaining on him.
Yeah. Yeah, just too competitive. Won't do it.
Do you mind? Am I allowed? Is this freewheeling here? Am I allowed to ask Mark?
Absolutely freewheeling. I will get back to my point. Maybe that's the point of old school. So go.
I'm going to show you how old Mark Thompson is. Do you remember the joke about the McNeil era hour going from half an hour to an hour?
That was a joke, and Cenk knows it too, because I believe Ben has related it to Cenk. It was Frank Mankiewicz who said at a meeting of CPB, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. They were talking about where their money was going to go, and he was at that point. Frank Mankiewicz was running NPR, National Public Radio, of course, and they say, well, so we're going to have this much money for investigative stuff. We're going to have this much money for international offices. We're spending this much money to expand the McNeil-Lehrer report to an hour, so it'll be the McNeil-Lehrer News Hour. And Frank Mankiewicz chirps up and says, "I thought it was an hour."
That's one of the greatest.
Which is one of the great. Yeah.
What do they call it now? It's the PBS News Hour, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Frank has another line that I absolutely loved and say on the air still to this day from time to time. And by now everybody has forgotten where it comes from. But so Frank was Bobby Kennedy's press secretary. Of course, tragically had to announce the news of his death. And did a miraculous primary campaign for McGovern and got him to win the Democratic primary. So let alone president of NPR. So Ben's dad, Frank Mankiewicz, is a total legend. And so, yeah, poor guy. I mean, doesn't have a great family tree, but Frank was hanging in there, right? And so he then later went into PR later in his career, and he was repping Oliver Stone's JFK. And the conservatives had been railing against it, including Bob Novak, legendary conservative columnist and commentator on TV. And so Frank left him off the invite list. And Novak went anyway, thought, like, there's no way. Of course, I'm one of the grand poobahs of DC. Of course I can go in, right? So he gets there and he's not on the list. And they're like, sorry, sir, you were just not on the list. And he's like, this is outrageous and obviously ridiculous. And there's got to be an error here. So call Frank, because he knows that Frank is representing the movie, and get him out here. And they said, okay, fine. And then they get Frank out there, and he says, all right, obviously there was a mix up, let me in. And Frank says, no, I'm sorry, we just, you should have applied earlier. It's a long list, very popular movie. You should watch it when it comes out, okay? But sorry, we don't have any room. And Bob looks at him and shakes his head and goes, Frank, I thought you were smarter than this. And Frank responds, wrong again, Bob. So that's why you'll hear me from time to time on the air say, wrong again, Bob.
No.
Okay. So back to ivermectin. So there's so many angles to the story, but let's start in Hawaii. So the Lieutenant Governor, Josh Green, has been besieged because he's asking people to get vaccinated. He has a second job. He's an emergency room doctor, and he was just on MSNBC, and he said, everyone who's my patients from coronavirus are unvaccinated, and almost all of them regret it. And but it's too late. You can't get vaccinated after you're already sick, and of course a lot of them die. And we just had a couple prominent people, relatively prominent people die. There was the head of the South Carolina Republican Party who was very against vaccines, gets it from his deathbed. He's like, please take vaccines. He dies. Phil Valentine, a conservative talk show host, even did a joke parody of Taxman from the Beatles and did Vaxman and made fun of vaccines. got it from his deathbed, said, my bad, everybody take vaccines, and then died. That just happened. So Josh Green is the lieutenant governor and a doctor, and he's seeing it every day. So he's of course telling people to take vaccines, and he says a huge percentage of people that come into his office ask for ivermectin. So they say, nope, vaccine, that's what all the doctors are saying. So obviously I'm not buying it. I'm gonna go for the thing that the veterinarians are talking. I mean, this is gonna lead to a question to you guys about what to do about these folks, which is a common question. But first,
well, it's Josh Green, Dr. Green. He's an emergency room physician. But has he done an emergency room physician? Has he done his own research on the internet? I mean, I don't trust anybody who hasn't done their own research on the internet. He just has a medical degree.
Yeah, that is a very fair point. And I don't know if he's gonna know all the conservative blogs on Facebook. And so he does seem a little untrustworthy. And that's why protesters gather around his house, you'll be excited to find out. And so they're protesting, stop trying to save our lives. Stop trying to save our lives. And we had Ben Gleib, another Comic-Con on Friday.
I saw that, that was funny.
Yeah, and he went to the restaurant down in Orange County that bans people who've been vaccinated or wearing masks. He wore a mask and they literally ripped it off his face and shoved him out the door. And he was hilarious. He kept saying, I'm sorry, I was trying to protect you. I'm so sorry, I'll never do it again. I promise I'll never protect you again.
Right.
Okay.
Ben is great. Ben is a great. Now, what we couldn't get Ben today? How do we end up with David? Is that Ben is so funny.
I'm a poor man's Ben Gleib. That's how I get introduced.
I'm sorry, I digress. Anyway, so you're talking about ivermectin.
Yeah, so this is gonna take a dark turn. Of course, anything with conservatives takes a dark turn. So they put flyers around the neighborhood, and some of them called them a fraud. Of course. Anybody want to guess what some of the flyers called them?
What they call Dr. Green?
Yes.
Well, I mean, I would assume.
I mean, I guess I'm guessing fascist. Something related to fascism or Hitler.
Yeah. So, Mark, that's a fair guess, but we're going to go in the opposite direction, and the conservative mind is a little simpler than that. So
Marxist.
No, that's a fair guess given what I said. No, they just the flyers accused him of being a Jew.
That was my first instinct because I am a Jew. Sorry, I must have a little COVID there. A Jew. I'm sneezing there. Yeah, I thought Greenberg. That was where I wanted to go, but I thought let's not. Yeah, QAnon is basically an anti-Semitic. That's what it's all about.
Yep. I've said this many times before. Walter Masterson, another comic, we've talked to him a couple of times, used him once or twice, and he does this thing where he dresses up as MAGA or QAnon, and he goes in and he talks to them. They already say crazy things especially when they think he's one of them, and then he turns off the camera and then he asks them, "Okay, what do you think is really happening?" And they always say it's the Jews. And so. No, we're in a super dark place in America, super dark place. I mean, they like where people feel comfortable putting up a flyer saying, don't trust the doctor because he's a Jew. I mean, that's mental in two different ways and significant.
That's the only reason to trust a Jew is if he's a doctor. Take it from me. I'm a globalist, and I can assure you, as a member of the cosmopolitan elite, trust a Jewish doctor.
Yeah. So, guys, how do we talk to these people, or don't we? Right? Because like now, I'm a little afraid to talk to them. Because so I've said this a bunch of times on the show too. I got a neighbor who's got a QAnon bumper sticker. I vote him like he's COVID. So I inject myself with ivermectin and walk around the neighborhood. No, like seriously, I never talk to him because only bad things can come of it. But this has infected a ton of people. This is a different virus, right? And I don't mean the anti-Semitic people. I mean, what are you going to do with those folks? Of course, you can't talk to them. They've lost their minds. But let's start with something simple. Do you guys have folks in your lives personally that are anti-vax that have not taken it?
I know people who have not. Yeah, I know people who have not. I know people who have who do the whole, and the dance is similar. I think in all cases, I'm going to let my immune system. We've been given this great immune system, and this gets in the way of it. I don't know a lot of people. I think I just can think of two in the same family.
Yeah.
But they're out there. I mean, I think the Venn diagram of those people does overlap my life in a very small way, but it does. Yeah.
Yeah, I used to have a lot. I had a lot of friends who were anti-vaxxers. They're dead now, so no, I don't really know too many anti-vaxxers.
So, I mean, we're in a dark place, so dark comedy makes sense.
No, I'm being serious. That wasn't.
No, you really are. You serious?
No. Here's the deal. I'm a malignant narcissist, and I know these people because I can relate to these ignoramuses because I'm an ignoramus. And the worst thing you can do to an ignoramus like me is ignore me. I need to own you. And if I can't own you and mess with your mind and gaslight you, I have no purpose for living. So if you have a neighbor who says he's QAnon and he can't own you, he's completely lost. If you just go, that's great, man. That's great. So have the kids, just accept them. And that worked in the 30s in Nazi Germany, by the way. Just own no, I'm joking about it. I think for the most part, I think if you ignore no, you disagree with. I think if you ignore the QAnon people and they can't own you, you're hurting them.
Yeah, look, so there's different anti-vaxxers for different reasons from different cultures. So a really good friend of mine is anti-vaxxer, but he's Turkish, so he's not trying to own the libs. He doesn't care about the politics of it at all, and he just loves conspiracy theories. He believes them. He thinks I'm a sucker for not believing them. And mind you, he got vaccinated. And the reason he got vaccinated is because he got coronavirus. And so he didn't quite believe it. He thought it was real, but that it was, something to do with the government, of course, and the masks were totally useless. Come to find out, the masks were useful. And he texted me from the hospital bed saying, Cenk, make sure you wear a mask. And then when the vaccine came out, even though he's against vaccines, he's like, yeah, that almost dying thing was not pleasant. So I'm just in case maybe I'll get the vaccine. And he did, so thank God, and I love it. But
it's funny that he felt the need to text you. I love how they always feel like they need to text people who are already telling them the message that they were pushing back against. Don't text me, man. Text the people who you're listening to 24/7 in your confirmation bias world where you just seek out information that confirms this ridiculousness that you already believe. Those aren't the people he texts. He texts Cenk, who is already out in front on this thing.
Right.
I know that's his way of saying my bad. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So, bless his heart. Right.
I mean, there is,
right, and bless there his are. Heart. Go ahead. All right. Bless it. All right.
Bless his heart. And there are people. I guess what are there, about 70 million now, 80 million who still haven't gotten vaccinated. A lot of them don't have the luxury to take a day off to get vaccinated, and maybe take the next day off after you get that second jab, where you're not feeling 100%. So not everybody who's unvaccinated is to blame. There's
that's a spin that is, and I know you're not spinning. I know you're making a substantive point, so I don't mean to diminish it.
I'm just trying to come across as woke.
I was going to say it may apply to some people. I'm sure it does apply to some people, but in general, the people I'm seeing who are taking time off to attend a rally in New York, a rally in Pennsylvania, a rally for the weekend, this is a crew that has the time. They have the time to get a jab. They have the time to then call in sick if they have some kind of side effect that prevents them from rallying for work. I don't know. I think that's weak sort of excuse for not doing it at this
Did I
point.
come across as sensitive at least?
Yeah, you did though. It did.
Okay.
I thought it was effective. Yeah,
Good.
it was
very
yes,
sensitive.
well
And
done.
even-handed.
Standpoint.
Even-handed.
Yes,
Yeah,
even-handed. Right.
Like not only that, I thought you were actually a bit tender.
Thank you. And you can't see the bile that's bubbling up inside of me.
No, you've really developed the
Thank
skill. You're choking that down.
Yeah. And you're actually the most pleasant, calm, malignant narcissist I've ever seen.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
I know actual malignant narcissists who also used to work here, but that's a different story. So
who might be an anti-vaxxer?
That's right, and talked about ivermectin with Tucker Carlson. So, yay, left wing. Anyways, but that gives you a sense of how insular we are. That my anti-vaxxer friend got vaccinated, right? So I barely run into these folks, but 40% of Republicans say they will never take the vaccine in a recent poll.
The reason, I don't mean to interrupt, but the reason that's so bizarre to me, I mean, not the Republican Democrat thing or whatever, is that the numbers are so damning. I mean, it's just so overwhelmingly the case that the hospitals are overflowing with people who are all, I mean, you can say it almost to a person, all those who haven't received the vaccine. So I just think that, I don't know how you stand up against those kinds of facts.
Well, you don't know about valor. My uncle Morty was an anti-vaxxer and a Republican, and he died this morning. I went to the hospital, and he was an anti-vaxxer, refused to get the vaccine, and the sweet death on his face. He looked at me as he died, and he said, "Take that, Joe Biden." Those were his last words. "Take that, Joe Biden," and that's a beautiful death.
Yeah, he owned the libs, you're saying.
He owned the libs. Take that. Yeah. Those were his, and that's going to be on his tombstone. Take that, lib.
Well, that is a beautiful, that is a stirring
It's a sweet
story.
death.
You're right. Yeah.
So as I hear that story, obviously I'm bummed that I never got to meet Uncle Morty. Yeah. He sounds lovely. But in that joke is some truth, obviously, and that's why David's a good comic. But that they are doing it to own the libs, and they're literally killing themselves to own the libs. And if there's one thing that unites Republican voters, even more so than fear or hatred, it's owning the libs. And so
this is our voter suppression. See, we're playing three-dimensional chess with the Republicans, and I'm going to spill the beans. I understand there are some Republicans who watch. This is our form of voter suppression. It's very quaint the way you're passing these laws, no Sunday voting, discourage the black churches from getting it. That's beautiful. That's cute, but we're playing a whole other level of voter suppression with the Republicans, the vaccines.
We create vaccines that work just so you won't take them. And then on top of that, we create deworming medicine for horses just so that you will take them.
Exactly. You keep scrubbing the voter rolls and making it harder for black people to vote Republicans. It's really cute. But this vaccine thing, 2022, let's see how many Republicans can lift a ballot to vote on election day.
That also has a serious element to it, which is like, no joke, in Arizona and Georgia and Wisconsin, razor thin states, purple states, where Biden won by razor thin margin, and Trump in the previous election had won by razor thin margin. So these are getting decided by a couple thousand votes, and the whole presidential election is. And they just killed a couple of hundred to a couple of thousand voters, almost all Republicans in Georgia, Arizona, and Wisconsin. And let alone Florida, where they killed a hell of a lot more than that. It's less of a swing state these days, but it can be. And they're trying real hard to make it swing. And then what's amazing, God, guys, like we've gotten used to it. But the reason I wanted to have a conversation about it here is because when you step outside of our bubble of like having lived in America and lived through all of these experiences, when you step outside of that for a second, it is just phenomenal. If you told me 5 years ago, let alone 10, 20 years ago, hey, the Republican Party is going to get to a point, or either party is going to get to a point where they celebrate the governor of Florida, and he's the leading candidate for the Republicans other than Donald Trump, because his negligence killed the most amount of people per capita. Like, he would not protect their health. Then his own voters died in the thousands because he gave them the wrong information, and they loved him for it. I mean, if you put it in a movie, no one would have believed it. That's so outrageous and over the top. I mean, it's not even over the top. They would say that's nonsensical.
Yeah.
Mark owns stock in the monoclonal antibody drug that DeSantis is pushing. So I think you've crossed the line there.
Let me speak on his behalf. First of all, order it by name, even if you're not sick yet. The monoclonal antibody, you just want it. But by the way, I think you could spin that, which is that DeSantis cares so much about freedom and your individual freedom that he's willing to sacrifice his own voters and his own political future to make that point. You see what I did there, Cenk? I just took the grim reality, which you point to, which is accurate. I mean, everything you said was accurate, and I just spun it. And that's the world we live in now. I mean, that sure, you're someone who wants to prop up these petty dictatorships, and from California to all the other lib states. You can't stand the fact that we're free in Florida to, if we want to head down toward the light at the end of the life tunnel, we can do it. I mean, to me, it's just another level of insanity. The problem is that these case rates are running so high in Florida and Texas and other parts of the South, and we're all swimming in the same pond. It's the same thing with environmental destruction that we're doing. That it's just that it's dragging us all down. It's dragging us all down as a country. It's the ripple effects are substantial and seem, that it's hard to quell them. I mean, I don't know that you will.
Hey, did you read the New York Times? It was like 2 weekends ago. I'm not making this up. That 80% of all coffins are made by just 2 companies. Did you see that? It was on the op-ed page. No. I'm not making it Big Coffin. There's a thing called Big Coffin. I'm not talking about Phil Valentine, the radio host who had COVID. That's a different type of Big Coffin. But there's actually Big Coffin, 2 makers. That's it. All the
you're saying that the consolidation that's happened in media and other corporate entities and how they've gobbled up everything, you're saying it's happened in that world of
in the coffin
making business. Yeah.
I'm just saying, and we should look into that, because I would assume that they might be behind this.
Oh yeah. I know about Big Coffee because Cenk talks about it all the time. The Too Strong coffee. But, didn't know about Big Coffin.
Yeah, Big Coffee is the only Big that's good, other than Biggie Smalls. I mean, there was irony there. There was a lot of good things about Biggie Smalls, but Big Sugar. I
thought we needed to break up Biggie Smalls, quite frankly. I was there at the Peterson Auto Museum, when they try to break up Biggie's.
Yeah, I mean, he was notorious, so I think that's.
Oh wow.
So twostrongcoffee.com/TYT. Okay, so maybe, but if you think about it again, dark humor, but it makes sense. Like, unfortunately, endless wars, climate change that's leading to one disaster after another, killing people all across the world. The fires, are part of that, and now not taking the vaccine. What's the one uniting thing? It helps Big Coffin.
It helps Big Coffin.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so the Republican Party been working for Big Coffin for quite a while now. So, but all this is supposed to lead to not the politics of it. That's easy and obvious, right? Of course, you take the vaccine, they're done for not taking it, of course, right? But what do we do with each other? I mean, can we live together as a country? So in my case with my friend, it's kind of easy because He calls me an idiot, I call him an idiot, and we move on. And we have a great relationship outside of the fact that he thinks I'm an idiot and I think he's an idiot. So that's fine. We have a detente on that, right? And he's not from America. He's not doing it to own the libs or anything like that. It's just he loves conspiracies. Okay, but here in America, I don't know a single anti-vaxxer, and if I did, I think I would lose all respect for them instantly. So are we never supposed to talk to Republicans again? Are we?
Well, it's hard to kiss and make up with somebody who's not vaccinated.
Yeah, but I mean, again, quite literally. I mean, it's a joke, but it's not. And so, Mark, you're generally a better man than I am. I can't speak for David yet, but so
no, you're a better man than I am.
So. What do we do with our neighbors? What do we do with some giant percentage of the country that is just not living in the real world?
Yeah, this is an issue. Look, when you say, I mean, I know what you mean. I'm kind of I don't want to say move along, get along, but I am sort of like try to find a way to connect to people. I enjoy people, and so I try to get away from those things that are the sharpest edges around people. And I find that there's still ways to enjoy each other's company without getting into these things that rub you up against the sharp edges. Now, as we become more dug in, and as our life becomes increasingly defined by some of these big issues, one of which is, I mean, a public health emergency. It's hard, it's hard to do that dance. It's one thing to avoid politics, okay? We're getting together with the Euchers tonight. Don't mention anything about politics because Cenk is a crazy progressive, and we're nutty conspiracy theorist alt-righters. But we still love his Too Strong coffee, and so we enjoy them. That's you can find some kind of enjoyable evening there. The reason that parallel doesn't hold up, and I will wrap up here in a second, is because so much of your life and so many things that you like to speak of are things that are going on right now, in the culture, in the politics. So in the case that I just given, it probably wouldn't work that well. But if you can find some sort of world of interaction that doesn't involve some of these sharp edges, I think that's the gateway to making change. Really, you're not going to, and not that you should always be having making change on your agenda, but I'm just saying making no attempt to connect with people, that's certainly not a way to get to any better place. So difficult though it is, it would be nice if we could interact on whatever level. Maybe it's food, maybe, but in a perfect world, I think that's what you want to do.
I'm a optimist. I when I think of COVID, I say the lungs are half empty. I'm an optimist, and so let me write that one down.
David, tell the story about. David wrote.
I want to write that one down.
You want to make your point?
I want to write that down as a reminder not to ever do that joke again.
David used to write for Steve Martin, as you know, and Martin Short and a bunch of other people. But I mean, he's regularly written for these huge names. And Steve Martin used to write you emails going, "This bit really worked. Thank you so much, David," or "Great idea here." What did you? Maybe this doesn't come across, but I thought that was a great thing that you then said to Steve Martin. You recall what you told him?
No.
You said, "Steve, I appreciate all the emails, but could you send me a thank you note, handwritten, because it's too expensive for me to nail all of the computers to the wall to show everybody."
Right, to get a letter from to
show everybody that I have emails from Steve Martin. So David is a very talented comedy writer.
Yeah, the thing about, I am optimistic. I seriously am about the arguing, because if we can have free tuition at our public universities, I think there's a natural curiosity that all Americans have, and it's a good thing to be debating and arguing and not marching in lockstep, and to have the beginnings of critical thinking, which It is in all seriousness. I think the fact that we're not getting along on scientific issues, as dangerous as it is, and on political issues, as dangerous as that is, it can be turned into a good thing.
Well, David, they're not elevated conversations of the sort that you're referring. No,
we can elevate those conversations.
But you're not talking about people. If you had only had free college, you would have elevated conversation. I just don't think that in many of the discourses that are now dominating information and the public airwaves, I don't think it's not a question of education. It's a question, I think, of confirmation bias, and as Cenk was saying earlier, owning the other side. And you have to agree to whatever facts and set of facts that you need to agree to own the other side.
Well, you had a bad experience at college because you were homeschooled, but I'm talking about most people who got a college degree at a public university.
I see. Well, maybe you're right then.
Your parents homeschooled you to get your dental degree, I believe, right?
Yes, thank you very much. Dental degree.
And you can, I believe you're qualified to practice dentistry in communities where there are no teeth, if I'm not mistaken.
I see. Well, yeah, I haven't received any official certification, but thank you for that. But I dispute your initial point, sir, and but I maybe not with the vigor that I did initially. I think that you do need to. I love the idea that you can mix it up, and through the mixing it up, you get to a better place. I just think these days, have you seen the mix up? Have you seen the conversations? Have you seen the back and forth? They're just, if you're looking at a different set of facts and you can't even agree to budge a little bit on either side, tough to get to some kind of.
Well, so maybe it's, in all seriousness, maybe we have an obligation to elevate the debate on our side. If we're going to engage with people on the other side, instead of trying to prove that we're smarter or morally superior, maybe there's a way. I don't know how. Maybe there's a way to engage the other side. I think Bernie could tell you how to communicate with the other side. He did really well on Fox News at the town hall with Bret Baier. He knows how to communicate with the other side. So is this about our side winning and proving that we're better, or trying to improve the country?
David makes a really good point, Cenk. That's the first really good point that David's made.
I didn't mean what I said, by the way.
No, but that Bernie thing is a key point, isn't it, Cenk?
I take it back, real. Man.
Yeah. So look, there's a lot I want to say about what David said. So first, there's long-term value in the discussions and debates, et cetera, because I take myself as an example. I grew up as a Republican in New Jersey back in the 80s and 90s, and then I had some great.
Well, that's teachers. A double negative, so that's a positive. A Republican from New Jersey is a double negative, so that's a good thing. That's a positive.
There you go. I won't accept that joke actually on behalf of New Jersey.
I'm from New Jersey. I'm from
England. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Then I reverse it and I accept it. I forgot. That's right. So now, but I had this great poli-sci teacher, John Calamano, and he got us to open our minds and discuss and debate and planted a seed, and then seed grow into the oak that's my head now. So take that as you will. But seriously, in the long term it works. In the short term, it's pretty hard. One of my ideas is to restart the draft, and that would hurt Big Coffin in a couple of ways. Number one, if we restart the draft, we ain't going to no wars.
I agree with you 100%.
Yeah,
I agree with you 100%.
And if you made it so that rich people could not get out under penalty of law from the draft, then we ain't going to no wars. Like even if we get invaded, we wouldn't go, right? So but the second reason is because it brought us together. World War II didn't just. Hey, the draft didn't just help us beat the Nazis and win the war and change history and all these wonderful things that happened, but also it brought kids from Brooklyn and Kansas and black and brown and white kids together and made them know each other and empathize with one another. So we've got to bring us back together because we're all in our completely different bubbles. and we're not talking to one another, et cetera. Now, but David, on the other hand,
can I just address that for one second? Because in all seriousness, I feel very passionate about bringing back the draft, and not just because I hate my children. I agree with you 100% that because my father served, and one of the things that the greatest generation learned is not to trust authority figures. They didn't trust heroes. They knew my father would look at General Milley or General Austin and know that these guys are full of it. That's what a draft does. It teaches you a healthy disrespect for people who hide behind their medals.
Yeah, it's ironically, I talked earlier today, you guys will see it tomorrow, or the audience will at 5:30 when you see the conversation. I talked to Richard Ojeda, who has 16 medals. And he said the same thing you're saying, David. He's like, he did tons of tours in Afghanistan, Iraq, many other places. That's how he got the 16 medals. And he's like, you go there, the command is full of crap, right? And that this war is a total waste. He said when he got there, they had gotten bin Laden. I think he said when he was on the plane, and so he lands, and a guy says, "Did you hear?" And he said, "What?" He said, we got bin Laden, and he's like, "Oh, that's great. When are we going home?" Mm-hmm. And that was a decade ago, because when he knew, when he said, "Look, everybody knew." I don't know that.
And where is what part of Afghanistan is Abbottabad? They got Osama bin Laden in Abbottabad.
Yeah.
What part of Afghanistan is that?
Well,
exactly,
David, you're going to be surprised to find out it's not in Afghanistan. It's in a completely different country.
What?
I know. This is now. Wait for this, Lou. Did you know that 15 out of the 19 hijackers were not Afghans? They were
Iraqis. They were sent by Saddam Hussein.
No, funny enough, 0 of them were from Iraq and 0 of them were from Afghanistan.
What?
I know. It's 15 out of the 19 was from Saudi Arabia, which you'll never guess is actually one of our top allies, David.
That can't be true.
So that's why I say, like they say, oh, Trump with the big lie and Trump with all the lies, et cetera. Dude, the establishment invented the big lie and all those lies. Like, Saddam didn't attack us on Iraq, and none of the mainstream media were freaking out about that lie, let alone weapons of mass destruction, et cetera. But to me, him attacking us on 9/11 was a much, much bigger lie, because it was super clear that he did not. And I'll never let this go. 70% of the country believed when we invaded Iraq that Saddam Hussein had personally attacked us on 9/11.
Right.
So
and then you wonder why people don't trust vaccines.
Thank you. I was going to make the same point. Exactly, David. That's right.
But guys, look, we're out of time. But that point is super real. That is part of why they don't trust vaccines, because the mainstream media has been telling them their whole lives that politicians are wonderful, honorable people, that they're having real principled debates, and that the millions of dollars that they're getting never affects them, and because they're so honorable. And those kinds of lies are so transparent to any real person in America that unless you're totally brainwashed by mainstream media, which is a different cult, but it really is, it is a cult. And it's arguably a larger cult, right? Unless you were brainwashed by mainstream media, you would never believe that. And so after a while, and I'll give Republicans the most ironic credit here, and hence maybe the beginning of our detente at some point, which is that they caught on to the mainstream media being liars before anybody else did. And they're like, oh, you're telling me politicians aren't corrupt, that they're really having principled debates. Nah. You guys
beloved Obama from the great state of Martha's Vineyard ran for president, telling us Afghanistan was the good war, that we took our eye off the ball. Saddam Hussein didn't attack us, Afghanistan did. That's just as big a lie as George W. Bush saying Saddam Hussein attacked us. But we fell for that. The Democrats at least fell for that. Yeah, I'm going to vote for Obama. We took our eye off the ball. We should be fighting in Afghanistan. Afghanistan is Obama's war. That was the good war.
Well, certainly he had the exit ramp to get out of Afghanistan once Osama bin Laden was taken out. I mean, once you've checked that box and you've checked off on Al Qaeda, yeah, you can get out. But I thought he would spike the football and get out of Afghanistan after the killing of Osama bin Laden. I was astounded that he didn't. Maybe I shouldn't have been, but I was.
He went into Martha's Vineyard instead.
Yeah. By the way, the media is blaming Biden now for withdrawing. They're screaming it from the rooftops 24/7 because some people are getting killed. It's it's not a well executed exit, and that's true. But they never screamed at Obama for keeping us in Afghanistan for 8 years, and a lot more people died in those 8 years, both Americans and Afghans, and yet not a word of critique of Obama. So the normal war machine, perfectly fine. Leaving the war machine, whoa, that's messy. Oh my God, the children. You just found out about the children of Afghanistan and that they're in danger. We killed tens of thousands of them. I never saw it on the news. Did you see it in the news? So, and all of that then eventually leads them in the wrong direction. So then the right wing goes, well, I know those guys are liars, so I'll look for a different answer. And that's when the con men come in, the Trumps, the Tucker Carlsons, et cetera, and mislead them. And next thing you know, they don't believe anything and they won't even take a vaccine to save their lives. Because honestly, they're correct that the media lied to them for all these years. And so that's the depressing place. All right, we're way out of time, but we got members, we got a whole nother 45 minutes for you. But before we leave the public one, I just want to read a couple of quick things, and then it's going to lead to the members only one. Jess B. Anti-Racist says, I've been a TYT member since 2014, and honestly, old school is the reason I became a member. So love you, Jess. Occam's Taser says, I'm ready to be educated by Cenk. In Super Chat, that guy, actually, let me save that because that's going to be the tease for the next one. Crazy Hawaiian gave 600 bits on Twitch. No Breaks wrote in, Dave Feldman is hilarious. Love the videos of him calling into the Majority Report. So we also have some ignorant viewers. It's possible. Dave Schmidt gifted 2 subs. Mappy Salva Lou wrote in, is this a resub? I guess. Is it the best use of Bezos bucks? Of course. And then check in L Parker and Lady Wolf all signed up. And finally on Super Chat, that guy wrote in, not a lot of people know where dogs came from. Can you believe that? Cenk invented the word dog, that I can tell you. So for those of you who have not heard about dogs and wolves, we'll bring it over to the member section, and we talked about high school. We talked to Nina Turner about her high school career in the bonus episode on Friday. I want to talk to David Feldman a little bit, and I forget every time whether I asked Mark what he did in high school. So members, I think you'll love the next episode. tyt.com/join to become a member, or hit the join button below on YouTube. We'll see you there. All right, back on the members only episode of Old School. So before I move off the depressing topic, I just want to say one last thing. Today on the show, we were talking about, on the Young Turks, we were talking about Proud Boys. They had a fight in Portland, and Antifa shows up, and then you're bound to get a fight, and the cops aren't even showing up anymore. That's what happened in Portland. It's a really dangerous situation. And the question was, when should Antifa show up? Should they show up? Because if they show up, there's a fight. Maybe if they don't show up, it's a bunch of Proud Boys jackasses in a parking lot, and no one cares, and we move on with our lives. The problem is that those guys then go antagonize other people. And we had another comic friend, and Proud Boys showed up to her event, to her comedy night. Now what are you gonna do, right? And they're just sitting there, and they're
did they pay?
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
So she's a draw. I wish I could get. I'll take.
Proud Boys, bring one, get one in free or something. Is that what you do, David, at your shows? Yeah.
Yeah,
that's right. Every 2 Proud Boys, the third one gets in free.
Do you really believe that there's such a thing as Antifa?
Do I?
Yeah.
Kind of, yeah.
I don't.
You don't. So.
And I don't. I think it's a false equivalency. With all due respect, do you really think the Proud Boys or the Boogaloo Boys or the 3%ers are like Antifa? I mean, Antifa doesn't exist, does it?
No, so I don't mean to equate them. They're definitely not equivalent, Antifa and Proud Boys.
Because I happen to be a 3%er, and I'm insulted that you would equate us with Antifa. Mark, I mean, what an insult.
Yeah, it has to be an awkward moment for you.
Yeah. No, I mean, Antifa doesn't, I mean, they punched Spencer in 2017, but was that Antifa or was that just some genius?
I hear you. They lack central organization because they're on the left. So it would be inconceivable that they could get organized. So that's true. And the 3%ers, for example, have been around a long time, and they are organized, and they have leaders, and they have they might even have an org chart. I don't know. Antifa definitely does not have an org chart.
You know who has an org chart? BLM and Black Lives Matter. Those protests were peaceful and well organized, and the only violence that we saw last summer came from outside agitators, from either the police, I'm sorry to say that, but the Washington Post did a story on this. The violence last summer came from the Proud Boys, the Boogaloo Boys, Kyle Rittenhouse showing up with weapons, the police, and outside agitators. But Black Lives Matter did not loot, they did not set fire, they were well organized. I'm sorry, one of their leaders ended up with $1 million home. That's criminal, but Black Lives Matter is a pretty well-run organization on the left, isn't it?
No, Black Lives Matter is very well run, and it is an actual organization. And Antifa is not an organization. That part is true. But do some people loosely calling themselves Antifa show up in places like Portland to counter Proud Boys, et cetera? The answer is yes. Do they, to what degree they call themselves Antifa? That's a different question. Are they a problem? No. But by the way, do some of those folks, whether they call themselves Antifa or not, that come from the left, are they also spoiling for a fight? Yeah, they are. Okay, and so maybe it's a fight on the good side, and maybe it's a fight to protect people, and likely it's not most of them at all. But do some of them want to fight? And they think, well, these are bad guys. If I want to fight, that's a good set of folks to fight. Yeah, I think I've seen that. And so, and in Portland, we were talking to a reporter today, and he's very, if I'm being honest about it, he's very sympathetic to the left. Okay, this reporter, and he explained the positions of the left-wing protesters, et cetera, really well. But he acknowledged, one of the other reporters was attacked by a left-winger for filming, and they didn't want her filming, and they assaulted her. So it's not impossible. It does happen from time to time. But is it equivalent to the Proud Boys? Hell no. But the only reason why I brought it up here is because Anna and I were wondering, should you go, should you not go? And I kind of offhandedly said, you should go to defend specific people, not necessarily the counter protest, right? And so when I see the Josh Green story, that's where if there is an Antifa or if there is any kind of real left-wing counter protesters, when people come to surround Josh Green's, that's Lieutenant Governor of Hawaii, his house for trying to save people's lives, and they put up those awful posters and flyers, etc. That's when you go, and you go, not on our watch, right?
Really? Isn't that something the police? Isn't that a job for the police?
I know, but the police are MIA, and they hate the left wing, and they never protect us. So, yeah, I mean, in Portland, the police, on purpose, did not show up.
They were coordinating with, they text with the the right wing extremists, the Portland police.
Yeah, look.
But is a doctor, an emergency room doctor? I mean, have the police become so broken that they're anti-vaxxers and anti-maskers, and they side with the QAnon? I know that there are police who stormed the Capitol, but are they that bad that they wouldn't protect an emergency room doctor?
No, I suspect that they would, David, and I hope to God they would. And it's Hawaii, so it's more likely to have police that are going to protect the lieutenant governor and a doctor, et cetera. But I worry about that crowd around his house. I worry about it. And so that's where, to me, defending that guy makes more sense, right? The counter protesters in Charlottesville, obviously it ended very poorly and one of them died, but that's where it made more sense. I mean, these guys are chanting Nazi slogans in the streets. At one point, they surrounded a synagogue. No, then, if we don't step up, then things get away from us. That's how terrorists intimidate the rest of us into living in a fascist state. So, but
I don't know. I think the street, I don't think the left owns the street. It never has. Dating back to Mussolini and Hitler, the left doesn't do well on the streets. We do better in the courts. And I don't understand the virtue to counter protesting the Boogaloo Boys who when you fight with the Boogaloo, that's what they want. You're on their terrain. Sun Tzu says you fight them on the field where they're less comfortable, in the courts, in academia, in politics.
Yeah,
I don't understand why the left thinks they can win on the streets when the police will never side with the left.
Well, it's not a question of winning; it's a question of showing up. I mean, as Cenk says, if you don't show up, then you've essentially, surrendered the streets. So you're in a very tough spot because you're right. They're spoiling for a fight. You show up, and they're more likely to get that fight. But if you don't show up, then you've essentially surrendered the streets to them.
So I mean, but hang on for 1 second. So you give them the streets. So what? This isn't Nazi Germany.
So they're able to harass businesses and locals. And I mean, that's what happens. I mean, is
that what happens when the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys march? They harass small business owners. Is that?
So look, guys, this is the vigilante stuff is really bad. I think it happened in the middle of a stream. I forgot to check to make sure, but that it's public information. But Haas got swatted. You guys know what swatting is?
Yeah.
And so some right
who got swatted?
Hassan.
Your nephew.
Yeah. And
when did this happen?
Over the weekend. And it's super dangerous.
Yeah.
I mean, he's in the house, and again, I'm talking a little bit out of school. I should have checked with him, but I think he's already said it on his stream. He lights a candle, and he hears someone saying he lit a candle. Now imagine how scared you'd be when you're like, "What is going on?" And it turns out the police had the building surrounded. because somebody had called in saying that he was about to kill someone and had a weapon. I mean, he's seconds away from getting killed. And so when people see that, they think, I don't want to mess with it, and they withdraw. And then eventually almost everybody withdraws.
Right.
And that's how the fascists win. And so showing up to people's events, showing up to their houses, sending the cops to put them in physical danger, on and on and on. And so like climate change, I know I was gonna move on to lighter topics, and so I swear it'll be the end here, but like climate change, fascism isn't going to come here in the future. It's here, it's here. And this is how the brown shirts intimidated people. And so we're stuck like they were stuck. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. You show up in the streets, you get rolled, right? Because the cops are on their side, or it causes more violence, and then you get blamed for it. I mean, and I guarantee you, a huge percentage of the country, if you ask them what's the most violent group in America, they'd say Antifa. It makes no sense.
Or Black Lives Matter.
Or Black Lives Matter. That's right. And so it's the opposite of true, but it doesn't matter. And then they slowly intimidate everybody until nobody wants to talk, and nobody wants to fight back verbally, rhetorically, or anywhere. So it's scary times, man. We're not at the end of it.
It really is infuriating. I'm sorry to hear that about your nephew. It's infuriating to see how the mainstream media allows the false narrative of last summer being violent because of BLM. It's the false equivalency of there being violence on both sides. It's just the media, the mainstream media has to call out, has to speak the truth.
They're never going to. They love tragedy porn. So when the minute a building goes on fire, they're going to cover it 24 hours a day for a week straight. And so and they don't have to say anything
about who set the fire. Who set the fire? Derek Chauvin's precinct in Minneapolis was set on fire by a white kid who wasn't associated with BLM. But that nobody talks about that.
Yeah, I mean, look, we saw the guy. There was a video of a guy who went around smashing the store windows, fully face covered, had an umbrella, obviously trying to avoid detection. So they're agitators, on and on. But when we're withdrawing from Afghanistan, the media is going to cover it 24/7. The tragedy, right? When there's protesters about injustice regarding African Americans, they're going to cover the fire 24/7 until everyone is left with the wrong impression.
What about the people who are worried about the streets? You don't want to give up. We can't cede the streets to the right, so they show up. Are they writing to their congressperson? Are they knocking on doors for Nina Turner? Are they trying to get the vote out? Are they going to where the real power is, to City Hall? Are they going to the school board meetings? I mean, that's to take to the streets. The real threat is who is your mayor? Who is your police chief? Who is your who's running your school board? It's easy to take to the streets, smoke a little weed, sip on some vodka, whatever, and think you're doing something. The real hard work is writing to your congressperson and your senator and showing up at meetings and voting. Are the people who take to the streets voting? I hope so.
Yeah. So
that's what we're seeding. I worry more about seeding electoral politics than I do the streets to subhuman Neanderthals on the right. Well, they're not worthy. They're not worthy of. They're only as dangerous as the government allows them to be. So take hold of our government, not the streets.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. It's like, by all means, we've got to take the government, and by all political means. And if we don't have the government, the federal government, for example, in 2024, we're in a world of hurt.
I mean, you saw Milley, General Milley's testimony about teaching critical race theory at West Point. I am no big fan of General Milley. I don't think he's particularly competent. But there's some institutional memory that we have here in the United States, West Point, and I'd like to believe that as long as children of the Enlightenment hold the real power in our courts, which we're losing to people like Gorsuch and these idiots from the Federalist Society, but we win by seizing the corridors of power, not the way the insurrectionists did on January 6th. Our strength is the Enlightenment, is in being smarter than people who have to resort to violence.
Well, coming out of these universities, though, David, I don't mean to always have such a bleak outlook, but
because you were homeschooled at college.
I was homeschooled, right? Exactly. And I'm reading the Dark Money, that Jane Mayer book, and it talks about the Koch brothers and the influence of money, something that Jank and TYT have been really out in front of for a long time to try to blunt and remove actually the influence of money in politics. And you just realize how into what you're talking about, into the university system, into the world of sort of grassroots, comes some of that money also. Not some of it, a lot of it. I mean, it's drenched in money. I'm talking about the local level. They got smart and they decided, hey, it's not just top of ticket, it's all the way down. And this has been discussed, but when you see it chronicled the way she does so well in this book, Dark Money, you realize that you're right. I mean, of course you're right. The courts, the universities, the back and forth associated with philosophy of government and of a strategy and social structure, these are all critical things, but they've been able to seed all of that as well. So you walk away from all of it saying this is a much stiffer uphill climb than I thought it was.
Right, academic rigor. I mean, again, academia has always been in the pocket of Wall Street, the financiers, the defense industry. That goes without saying, and the crypto fascists, but not the full-blown fascists. They can pump as much money as they want into academia, but there is such a thing as academic rigor. I like to think that prevents a vast preponderance of students from turning into fascists. Neoliberals, yes, they churn out neoliberals. But I don't think the colleges. I think we're seeing a Newtonian reaction to the Koch brothers with the wokeness, and the censorship on the college campuses. That I don't think they can get the colleges quite yet. They're trying. That's why we have the Heritage Foundation, the Cato Institute, and the American Enterprise. It's in the best interest of Turning Points USA. Charlie Kirk, high school graduate, is getting $30 million a year. If it's in the best interest of these quote unquote think tanks to spread the lie that there's a liberal bias on college campuses. But the American Enterprise Institute and the Heritage Foundation, they wouldn't exist if academia goes to the right.
So by the way, I wrote about this in my non-existent book that will come out, I hope, at some point. But it all comes back to the 1971 Powell memo, and how they planned a corporate takeover over the government. They executed it brilliantly. It totally worked, and that's why we live under corporate rule.
I don't think they thought it was going to work as well as it did.
No, they were actually at the time, if you read the memo, they were despondent. They thought the left is so powerful, corporations have no chance. That's what they thought. But if we're going to do it, this would be the way to take over the government. And they were right. And so you can hopefully read that one day at justicescomingbook.com to pre-order. You'll get it by the time David finishes his next podcast. Okay.
By the way, I am podcasting in the middle of this.
Is that right? Okay. Hey. So, all right, let's lighten it up. You guys mentioned education. This is my favorite question. David, where did you go to high school and what extracurriculars did you do? Sports, band, you tell me. Key club?
I went to Dwight Morrow High School in Englewood, New Jersey. It was a public high school. I was bused. It was part of court-ordered busing. And I played freshman basketball. I had a good hook shot, believe it or not. I could play basketball. My extracurricular activity was I was editor-in-chief of the high school newspaper, and they fired me.
That sounds exactly right. Okay, so
why did they fire you, David?
Yeah, why did they fire you?
The truth is, it was because of my grammar. But I like to think I was a firebrand who was rebelling against grammar.
Your rebellion against grammar worked, and so they realized the danger they were dealing with. Okay, makes sense. And did you like high school?
Everything is high school. High school is, I know it's a cliche, but for everything gets down to high school. That's, I think it's where you're reborn, you're defined, and you're fighting that definition for the rest of your life, even if you deny it. I think that you come of age, the average person comes of age in high school, and you're told who you are in high school. You realize how other people perceive you.
David, you just summarized like a year's worth of thinking that I did during COVID. And I talked to Mark about this, different aspects of it. But I realized when I was thinking about myself and analyzing my life that I still had that old view that I got from high school, from the cool kids and how they perceived me, and it was in constant conflict with what I think is my true nature, and so it created an imbalance, and that not only was it negative, but on top of that, it created that internal conflict that I couldn't resolve until this year, when I finally realized, what the hell would a bunch of kids in high school from the 1980s know about anything, right? And whatever became of those kids, and why did it matter that they wore the right shoes? And what were the right shoes? Was that a real thing? And what did they know about me? They barely knew me. They knew me passing in the hallways, and maybe one or two things I said in the hallways are on the team, right? They didn't know me at all. And they put all of these things onto me that I carried around like baggage for 40 fucking years, right? Until I finally dumped that baggage in a lake somewhere. Sorry, Mark, about the environment, but
and he also Mark also dumps things in lakes, but we don't want to talk about that.
Right? No, I'm sorry for two reasons, Mark, to bring that up. It's uncomfortable, but
they couldn't prove anything.
Yeah. So, what was the image they put on you, David?
Well, they don't. I don't mean to sound like a self-help guru. They don't put an image on you. You put the image on yourself.
Yeah.
Because when you begin to smoke dope and drink, you begin to realize that they were never thinking about you. I became an alcoholic and a pothead after high school. So the scary thing for me to realize after high school was they weren't defining me. They weren't thinking about me. They were just thinking about themselves. And the problem with recovery, so I started smoking dope right after college, and I fell in love with drinking and pot. And the problem is that in recovery, you have to return to who you were before you started drinking and smoking pot. And the person I was before I started smoking dope and drinking was the asshole from high school. So in order to become my better self, I had to be the asshole that I was, the loser that I was in high school. That was my better self. I was actually cooler and more fun to be around when I was drinking and smoking dope. But in order to get healthier, I had to become a creep. The creep I was in high school.
But you mentioned 3 different words there that are very different: creep, asshole, and loser, right? Because
that's who I was. Yes, creep, asshole, and loser.
But creep and asshole are bad, but loser is not bad, right? That's the thing that they get you to believe when it isn't true. You see what I'm saying? And so did you? Like I'll personalize it. I was not one of the cool kids. But I was a really weird case, right? I was on the middle linebacker on the football team, but I was in all the AP classes and I was a nerd, right? And so within the nerds, I was very popular. Outside of the nerds, of course I wasn't. And I was kind of an outcast on the football team, never got invited to the parties. They knew Jenks Square, don't invite him. He's, and that burned me up. Like that feeling of like, Cenk does, like you're right, of course, David. I thought of myself as the guy who doesn't know what he's doing because I don't know what the right brands are. I don't know how to get invited to the right parties. I don't know how to date the cutest girl in school, right? And I'm lesser than, right? There's a club and that club is above me. And that's what I got stuck with for 40 years, right? Until I could shed it. So,
but that club doesn't exist.
No, it's like Antifa. It doesn't actually exist. And that's right. And they weren't a club, and they didn't have an organizing charter. The cool kids in my school, right? They were a loose collection of people who probably don't even talk to each other anymore, right? And their opinions were groupthink, but like very vaguely so. It's amorphous, but they don't make all those movies because it didn't affect all of us in high school, right? It did, and that's why they make the movies, and it's hard to get past.
But this is why we are social creatures, and these stories that you two have just related, and I have a version of it as well, and everybody's got a version of it. They speak to how our view of ourselves is determined by the way the group receives us. That's why ghosting somebody can be a powerful way to isolate them. That's why ostracizing someone, it actually has a big effect. Icing them from Thanksgiving plans, whatever it may be. We seek the social acceptance of all of those situations. And so in a daily visit to high school and this social group, to be iced or looked at just the wrong way, that does have an effect on our self-esteem and our view of ourselves. We want to be accepted. For every kid, it's not that necessarily they want to be stars. I mean, everybody would like to be a star on the playing field or on the basketball court or whatever it is, but more than anything, you want to fit in. You don't want to be the one who is getting the side eye. And so that just is, I think, unquestionably baked into who we are as creatures, as Homo sapiens. And unfortunately, we're so dependent on what others think of us.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And I think the really operative phrase there was fitting in. And it's in our nature as Homo sapiens to want to fit in. You don't want to be ostracized from the group. That's a lonely, terrible place to be. You go to the woods by yourself, and you're in a world of hurt. You need the group, right? We're social animals, and so when people threaten to ostracize you, even in a de facto way, even without thinking about it, that's what really scars a lot of us. Right.
And that's why Steve Bannon I'm being serious, is so dangerous with the incels. And they understand the psychology of the alienated. They look for the men the same way that they say the jihadists look for the alienated men. And
well, this is the true believer, the Hoffer stuff that is so applicable to these situations where you find disaffected people, and they have a sense of purpose and coherence around all of these things. It goes to the Taliban, and it goes to, it's as contemporary as
to a Trump rally. A Trump rally.
Sure, exactly.
Yeah.
It is a social structure. But back to the high school situation, and that's the reason. And now it's taken, honestly, to a whole other level. It's even more difficult because you have an online acceptance that you need. You need an acceptance. You have to have the number of TikTok followers. You have to have some kind of online acceptance in whatever way. You might be a gamer. You might be, you search for that thing. I think it's an immensely powerful thing that can affect you powerfully in a positive way, or powerfully in a way to create insecurities that can define the rest of your life.
I wouldn't allow my kids to be on Twitter or Facebook. I think, I don't know if that's true. I didn't allow my kids to play video games. Wasn't allowed in the house, no video games. Partly because I'm 100 years old and they hadn't been invented yet. But I think the idea of my kids looking for Twitter followers and being on Facebook, that nothing good can come of that.
Yeah, but David, you can outlaw it in your house. The truth is that this is my point. The social structure is connected to all of these things now. They want to be there because that's what everyone. That's how everyone's communicating. That's the campfire around which everyone is rallying. You can't view it.
You're probably
of course, you're right about the dangers. Of course, you're right.
Probably right.
It's like outlawing friends in somebody's life.
It's interesting, the people like Zuckerberg and the social media tyrants, they don't allow their kids. The executives don't allow their kids on social media. They know how they're manipulated.
Yeah. So, people complain sometimes about, their algorithms are supposed to suck you in, and that's wrong. They were never going to get built in any other way. They were, of course, always going to build the algorithm to have you stay on their site for as long as possible. And so that's why they built it that way. It was inevitable. And the folks who built it are perfectly aware of that. In fact, they try to perfect that all the time. So expecting anything else is not, it's not going to happen. But for me, the fitting in was particularly problematic because, as I discovered later, I'm highly unusual, and so I am not likely to fit in places. Right? I'm a strange bird, and so if you're a strange bird that is not normal, right? Then boy, you're going to get hit with a nuclear dose of not fitting in college, in high school. And so, and if you're in that camp, I feel for you, right? And don't let them get you. There's nothing wrong with being unusual. And so, Mark, though, I'm curious. I forget if we talked about this. What were your extracurriculars in high school?
He made phony phone calls with the Mankowitzes.
I did like to make phony phone calls. It is true. After school, we'd go back to my house and we'd make calls. Then that was pre-caller ID. Imagine that. So you're really able to. But otherwise, I played football. During the football season. But it is true that we didn't have any baseball or anything. So There was no physical activity that was particularly, apart from just kind of generally running around. So it's funny. I don't think, honestly, that my high school experience was super great. I don't think my childhood experience was super great. It wasn't bad. I mean, it wasn't one of abuse or anything like that. But I think insecurities and issues relating to working myself into various social groups, I think that was a problem. It was a small school, a high school I'm talking about, and there were great people there like Ben and Josh Mankiewicz and others like them, and there were, and there are great stories that come out of high school as well. But fitting in oftentimes to a smaller environment, that can be tough because there are not as many people, But I would take the bus to school and I'd hitchhike for part of the way, and I'd get picked up because it's Washington, D.C. by like the chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee. I mean, it was really like that. That really did happen, and all the time. I took the bus and I waited for my pal Raymond to get on, who was this huge black dude, because he would be the guy who, like, we were really good friends, and he would essentially make sure that nothing would happen to me for the rest of the trip, because it was sort of a little bit of rough and tumble. So it was, I think, a mixed bag high school experience, and I suspect that some of the demons that I hear you talk about or reference, even just from a psychological standpoint, I think I fought those same demons, and I think I fought them on into the years that followed high school. I'm talking about insecurity and wanting to fit in and find your place, and also do what you love. You want to do what speaks to you. You don't want to do just the thing that makes you fit in with a group. You want something that fulfills your life, So all of these things I hear you guys talking about, I think, of course, I could relate to them as well.
Your father was CIA, and you told me that he used to bring home dossiers on girls you had crushes on.
Do you know my friend Dan in Washington, D.C., his dad was CIA, and it was always rumored that his dad was CIA, and his cover story was that he was an architect, okay? And we went over to his, and like, I started to hear this, and then later, it's funny, just like about 2 years ago, just pre-COVID, I saw him and I go, your dad was CIA, wasn't he? Oh yeah, he goes, yeah, he was the station chief and blah, blah, blah. It was really a crazy fact in Washington that those people did exist in your life, So
how cool would it be to have a dad? I have a crush on Patty Breckman. Can you get me a file on her so I know that would be the greatest thing in the world.
David, I don't know if you know this, but they're not supposed to do that. That would be inside the United States. And of course, they would never violate those rules.
Of course.
Never. A file on Patty Breckman, right?
Or maybe if you have a dad who works for Booz Allen and he's doing subcontracting for the NSA, that's better, like Snowden's old job.
Sure.
Yeah. And then you find out if Patty really did have to do her hair on Saturday night, or if she didn't want to go out with you. That
would be a great. This would be, what was it, Strauss, the guy who wrote The Pickup Artist?
Oh yeah, Neil Strauss.
Neil Strauss and the Incels. This would be a great way to teach men how to not be incels, how to.
Get a Booz Allen dad, and you
get a Booz,
insider info.
At our high school, did I tell you the story before, Cenk? I feel like I may have, but at our high school, about the guy who was the heir to the Wilson Sporting Good fortune. Have I mentioned that story to you?
Okay.
So this guy is, it was a progressive school where I went. It wasn't like in Washington. There's the Sidwell Friends, which is like the real Blazers and kind of uniform. And then there was my school, which is more progressive a little bit, just in terms of the way people called the teachers by their first name, that kind of thing. Anyway, so I don't want you to get the wrong idea, but this guy was the heir to the Wilson Sporting Good fortune. Okay, Wilson baseballs and everything else. All right, so
from Castaway, Wilson.
From Castaway, thank you. That's
Wilson.
Wilson, exactly. So he was really a gearhead and wanted to be a mechanic, and wanted to be a mechanic with another guy who was also taking this class. They were taking a class in in mechanic stuff, and they were taking it was a whole course, like it was several months. But after just very few classes, like a handful of classes, he and this other guy, they decide to take apart, this guy's name is Derek, his dad's Alfa Romeo. And it was a sports car, brand new sports car that his dad got, okay? So you got the heir of the Wilson Sporting Goods fortune for the evening going into the garage with this other guy. And they had a case of beer with them. And they started throwing back beers and taking apart, literally, this happened, the engine of this Alfa Romeo. And they put it back together again. And all of the parts fit. And they turned the key, of course, and nothing. The car made no sound whatsoever. And the next day, Derek didn't come in, and the next day he didn't come in, and then after that he came in, and he was, I think he was barred from seeing that guy anymore or being around him anymore. He was completely grounded. I mean, for months. I think he was grounded until the end of our entire high school experience. Yeah, and they brought in some guy in a white coat with an accent, and he put the Alfa Romeo back together again to get it to work for the. But that. And I wasn't even part of that, but like that sort of thing from the outside looking in, that stuff was the fun part of high school for me. Like crap like that, to just be a witness to it was insanity.
Nothing speaks more to midlife crisis than Alfa Romeo. That says everything about a man. As Edward Bernays must have come up with that name, Alfa Romeo.
That's a great.
Oh, you're right. I never thought about that before.
Take. You're right. Yeah.
It just screams like guy in his 50s. Viagra hasn't been invented yet.
There's some chance that Ted Cruz owns an Alfa Romeo. And drove it to Cancun. So what position did you play in football?
I was a linebacker.
You played. Really? Wow.
I did have one great moment, Jake. I scored a touchdown. David, touchdown is when you get to the other side, and Anyway, I was out there covering the running back, and it had rained the night before. This is how I kicked, but this is my one moment of glory. It depended on somebody else screwing up, and the running back jumped to catch this ball, which was a little high, but because it was a muddy field, he slipped. And the ball went right into my hands. And I just ran the other way. And that was it. That was my moment of glory. And my only moment of glory, which is why I still recall it all these years later.
I can one up you. The only touchdown I ever scored was in a JV game. Somebody else blocked the punt and I fell on it in the end zone.
That's great though.
That thereby creating the most inglorious touchdown in football history.
Well.
Are people happy?
Got to jump on it. You were the guy.
Are you happy playing football in high school? How could you be happy doing that?
Why? I loved it. Why?
This is the thing I'm talking about, though. It's a team. It's togetherness. It's everybody. I mean, I'm telling you.
No, I hated everybody on the team. No, I just liked hitting people. I'm not even kidding. I loved being a middle linebacker because I liked hitting people, and I liked that I was good at it. But there was 3 other nerds on the team, and it was like 61 people overall, or whatever it was, 65. I don't remember, right? And the 4 of us would hang out on the sidelines and make jokes about the rest of the knuckleheads, and then I'd go out there and decapitate someone.
And did it hurt?
Oh, I loved it. I didn't mind being hurt at all. I'd get into fights. I'd let the other guy punch me in the face first.
Really?
Yeah. So I like the pain of football.
Wow.
Yeah.
Remind me not to piss you off.
Agreed. Somebody else should have reminded someone else. It didn't work out that way though. So anyways, we're out of time. So I got to ask you one last question. Did you both know that dogs came from wolves?
No.
Yes, of course.
No, I didn't know that.
Oh, how can you not know that dogs come from wolves?
I mean, it makes sense now that you say it. It doesn't surprise me.
You're a PETA guy. How could you not know that dogs were
I never
bred?
thought about it. I just I've never thought about it.
And foxes and
No, but that's why I asked. Because Mark, I'm on your side. I read it, I don't remember how many years ago, 10 years ago, 20, 12, 3, I don't remember, right? But when I read it, I was like, oh yeah, I guess, yeah, right. And like this conversation just happened, right? And today we were talking about it in the bonus episode with Anna, and they were making fun of me saying, oh, everybody knows that dogs come from wolves. And I was like, I don't think it's everybody. No. I really don't. I think most people haven't even thought about it.
Yeah, I never thought about it. Never have.
And cats
makes total sense now that you say it, but
yeah, cats came from lions. That's another thing people don't know.
And they haven't changed. They say that dogs' DNA has gotten farther and farther away from wolf DNA, but cats, they have not been able to domesticate cats. The DNA of a cat is almost identical to that of a tiger or a lion, which is why it's so funny. Cat videos are so funny. You're watching these tiny little lions that are powerless, so they're neurotic.
Like we got them. So
cats are
they're funny because we're like, ha, cats.
You're
what happened now?
Look at you. You're a lion stuck on the 33rd floor of an apartment building in New York City, and I feed you.
Yeah.
Well, shout out to my cat people. I love my cats.
Yeah. No, I respect cats because you can't, you can't get that rebellion out of them. Just like David's rebellion against grammar. And so
wow, that's Shank, very well done. Bringing it on back home.
Yeah.
Is Grammarly grammatically correct? He spoke Grammarly. Are they one of your sponsors?
No.
Oh, okay.
So you can say anything you like about them.
Okay.
No, they're not correct. What now, Grammarly?
Yeah.
Ironic. All right, we're way out of time. David Feldman's podcast starts now, and then we'll pick it back up. I didn't even know that, David. And then I like that this is now a thing. But
it's only 8 hours. Why is that so hard for people?
This is the thing. I know we're leaving, but everybody, you think this is a joke, but it's not. He runs a show that goes on all day and all night. You check it out. It's true.
Well, now everybody's curious. They're gonna have to check it out.
Oh, it's not bad. I mean, it's really not. I'm astounded he's able to book. It's like, imagine the Tonight Show or the Kimmel Show, just going on and on and on and on. Like it's just going, wow, just one great guest after another keeps coming out. He does some good stuff. Anyway,
Mark is the voice. Mark is the voice of my show.
That's right. That's my favorite part of the show.
Yeah. What he is in the truth. He is a voiceover artist. I'm being serious, because I've watched you record voiceover work, and they call them voiceover artists. And I watch you do it, and I go, it is an art to do what you do with your vocal. It's truly stunning.
Thank you, David. I would like to say this: my show Super Heist is on right now on CNBC, and every Monday night it competes with Old School. Sorry about that, but it's on at 10 o'clock Eastern.
Tell the story.
Super Heist.
Yeah. Cenk, have you heard the story when he was the voice of 2 networks at the same time?
No, but we're gonna have to save that for the next one.
It's the greatest story ever.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm gonna put together a whole bunch of self-aggrandizing stories. Bye, Cenk. Bye, David.
All right. I'll see you guys next time. I'm gonna show up to whatever we're doing in an Alfa Romeo. Okay. All right, guys. Good night.
Good night.